I'm Scott Myers, Executive Director of the Miami County Park District. One exciting project that we had last year was a wetland restoration and stream bank restoration project at the John A. Wanamaker Nature Reserve between Troy and Tip City. This was a partnership with the Nature Conservancy where they worked with us to take what was a channelized ditch from the old farm fields and made it another meandering stream, which improved both the water quality and the fish habitat. They also took a lot of the area of old prairie and made it into wetlands because the hydric soils were there. By doing those wetland pockets, as well as reforested with over 26,000 trees and shrubs, it made for an incredible diverse habitat for that nature reserve. We're very excited about that project that happened last year. This coming year, we are going to be welcoming again the Banana Slug String Band to Lost Creek Reserve for our Hug the Earth Festival. For almost 30 years, the Banana Slugs have been coming to Miami County to help educate the thousands of children each year of our schools in Miami County about environmental education through the use of music and art. The band has been together for 40 years, and so we're going to be celebrating their 40th anniversary at the Hug the Earth Festival coming up this May at Lost Creek Reserve. This session features the state of the river and the impacts and benefits of the low dam removal process. Please welcome your facilitator, Sarah Hippensteel Hall.
Welcome. My name's Sarah Hippensteel Hall. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. Thanks for being here for this important conversation about low dams. So just a 1-minute intro, and then I'm going to turn it over to our first speaker. Low dams are sometimes called run-of-river dams. They're also called mill dams sometimes. They were originally built to support industry, sometimes manage water supply, or create small reservoirs, sometimes for recreation. They played a key role in early economic development across our region, across the country, really. But today, many of these structures, they've outlived their original purpose, or they've outlived their age, their infrastructure age, and they now present significant challenges on our rivers and in our communities. In our watershed alone, which stretches across all or parts of 15 counties, there are 60-some low dams. It's important to note that these are not the same as high-hazard dams that are designed for flood protection, like the ones that MCD operates. Low dams are much smaller, but they can still pose real risks, particularly to public safety, recreation safety. They're known as drowning machines, and they can create hydraulic currents that can trap even the most experienced swimmers or paddlers. I've heard it say that it will hold you down and rip your life jacket off. They also disrupt the natural flow of rivers, which affects water quality, habitat for our fish and insects, fish migration, aquatic habitat. They slow things down, pollutants can settle out, and the oxygen levels are lower there. It can also lead to raised or reduced water temperatures, which fish and insects don't like. So it worsens water quality for both people and wildlife. The most popular sport in the world is fishing, and so low dams can prevent some of those really healthy species from being really good for anglers. That's why communities, including MCD, are taking action. In recent years, we've removed several of the dams that we owned or built for communities over the years. It's restored natural flow, it's improved safety. You're going to hear specifically about one in this with this first speaker that we removed just a couple of years ago. It opens up new opportunities for recreation and habitat. So today is all about understanding these structures, why they were built, the problems that they pose today, and the decisions that communities face about their future. So thank you again for being part of this conversation. Please help me in welcoming our first speaker, Joel Thrash, to the microphone. Well done.
Okay. Thanks, Sarah. I know of no other advocate for the Great Miami River than Sarah, so make sure you give her a round of applause again. Yeah, just wanted to start off. My name is Joel Thrash. I grew up actually in Marietta, Ohio, at the confluence of the Muskingum and Ohio rivers. And my family's property was about a mile upriver on the Muskingum. So I was nicknamed the River Rat in college. So rivers are near to my heart. And dam removal projects are something we get to do in my career now. And so it's super exciting. I hope you learned a little bit of something today. The presentations intend for all of our speakers to kind of give you a high level of what's involved. Sarah mentioned this. There's really 4 purpose and needs that I've seen on all the projects we've worked on. It's either to manage risk, to protect human health and life from the killing machines that she's talked about with recreation paddling and things like that. Ecological lift, which is a driver of a lot of dam mitigation projects, dam removal projects that are funded by mitigation to improve the water quality and the fish diversity in the rivers. Long-term maintenance. Some people, MCD owns some dams, and sometimes we have to go out there and clear large woody debris that gets clogged up on there. So cost reductions for maintenance is important, and obviously the recreational amenities. Like, all projects have probably one of these 4 components, and the best ones have all 4 merged together. There's a general project sequence that's quite complicated, but I've tried to summarize it here. If you have these in your community, or you're working on with folks that have the ability to write grants or get and stakeholder engagement involved, these are the things that need to happen. First and foremost is stakeholder engagement. No successful dam removal project will ever happen unless all the folks that have ownership or recreational or all the different kinds of things that folks use that dam for, if they're not engaged, the project's going to die. And we think that there's primary and secondary stakeholders, usually the folks that are funding the project, folks that own the assets. They need to be in the primary circle of trust, if you will. And then there's many different secondary stakeholders that can involve all kinds of like watershed groups and people that use the river. So engagement is critical. Then there's usually a concept planning and design stage. Maybe it's like a 10% design or something like that. And then it's usually taken to another level to find funding sources. There's some grant funding sources that are going to be talked about later on in here, but Ohio has some great opportunities with the Ohio Public Works Commission, or the Water Resource Restoration Sponsor Program that uses the low interest loan on WPCLF projects that reinvests back into the communities where they can use that for restoration. Well, H2 Ohio program that came from Governor DeWine is an outstanding opportunity for that as well. And then there's private sources like for mitigation projects, folks that are using dam removals to offset impacts elsewhere in the watershed. Then it usually goes into the data collection stage, surveys, design, permitting, which I'll talk about on the next slide. But there's a lot of work that has to be done with bathymetry, sediment surveys, contaminated sediment surveys, utility surveys. Those kinds of things have to happen before we can keep proceeding into the permitting and design stage. Once we get through the permitting stage, which can take like a year for projects like this. These are long burn projects. Dam removals are not simple permits. There's many different entities that are involved. But when you get to that point and you get your permit approvals, you can go into the final design and then the construction and implementation. So here are some of the main concerns, our major design and planning considerations. I just reiterate that I think a strong stakeholder team with public engagement and agreed upon goals and objectives with a defined purpose and need will result in a successful project. Missing those things, it's probably going to die on the vine, and I've been involved in a lot of dam removal opportunities that did die on the vine. This is a picture of the Tate Station project Sarah referenced. The yellow dots represent a water line that we did not know about early on in the project and created back-end challenges. So infrastructure and utilities are critical to find and identify early on in the process. How we're going to manage sediment, because sediment has been backed up behind these dams for many years. Sometimes it can be contaminated. What are we going to do with that? How are we going to manage that? Obviously, there's flow and flood management that has to happen. The dewatering of the dam has to happen in certain stages so that it doesn't, so we can draw down the dam pools and be able to get equipment in there. I mentioned pattern, dimension, and profile. Every river has what we might call a bank fill dimension that it should be based on reference reaches in healthy parts of that river. And we want to try to mirror that and create that wherever the dam is removed. Many times, the rivers are over widened where the dams are because sediment has backed up and that kind of thing. You don't have a defined bank full elevations to mirror. So a lot of the sediment that gets dredged can also often be used to stabilize the banks along the river where the dam pool is going to lower. Scour is a big concern. Infrastructure, utilities, bridges that are downstream of the dam, there can be impacts on that. So we study that as well. And obviously the last three things are kind of the last two of the last three things are things that we look at and think of as ecological lift or benefits that we're providing for aquatic species. How are we going to incorporate fish ladders? Are we going to incorporate certain habitat features for certain species that need those types of things once the dam's gone? And recreational uses. The main thing here might be paddling. I know at Tate Station we did create a low flow channel on the left side of the river so that folks don't have to get out anymore. And certainly all the other dam removals that are in some stage of design right now will have that as well. And the main thing, most of the permitting will require a seasonality condition that this work be done only during Ohio's defined low flow period, approximately June 15th to September 15th. Permitting is the number one thing that scares people. Almost every federal and state agency in Ohio will have some nexus to a dam removal project. The most common pathway follows the federal funding sources. So if ODOT is sponsoring a dam removal project, it's going to be a federal highways NEPA document. If a federal grant is funding the project, whoever's issuing that federal grant will follow that process. If it's a state-funded source, then usually you're going to follow the similar process. But they all involve these steps, which are U.S. Army Corps of Engineers is the lead federal authority on at least every project I've worked on. They have primacy on navigable on rivers that have navigability. So Section 10 and Section 404 of the Clean Water Act govern those. Everybody's going to need those permits, but in order to get those permits, you have to do all the other federal nexus requirements that is mandated under NEPA. That includes like Endangered Species Act coordination, National Historic Preservation Act coordination. Not for scenic rivers, like the Little Miami River is a designated national wild and scenic river, so there's National Park Service coordination on projects that involve dam removals there. FEMA and ODNR. Finally, like a lot of times you have these state permits from Ohio EPA, Section 401 being the most common. I'm going to go into all these because I think Donnie, our next speaker, is going to touch on several of them, but I will bring up on the funding sources side, I think of dam removals best in the public-private domain. There are multiple opportunities for private investment in dam removal, and most of that comes through mitigation dollars. So people who fill 1 acre of wetland or stream somewhere have to then compensate that with a mitigation opportunity or pay into a fund. And that money often can be used for dam removals. Also, these public grants that some of our future speakers are going to talk about. I would just bring up that all these permits that I mentioned earlier, they all require some portion of long-term monitoring and permit compliance monitoring that can include IBI surveys, fish shocking, QHEI, IBI surveys of the river. So there is cost after the dam removal is completed to do those activities. And we always would like to advocate for adaptive management, which in things like making sure that any rock or structure that's been put in there and after the dam's removed is maintained and serves its function and purpose. For most dam removals, the number one thing is the gradients dropping, and the river can scour if you don't put something back, like a gradient control structure. So you're going to see a video in a second where that gets built. But those structures need to be maintained for at least a year or so after a few major flood events. All right, I'm going to cue this is the Tate Station dam removal that was done. Sarah referenced it at, I think it's Moraine. Is it Moraine or Dayton? It's right on the border. Dayton. All right, it's, right near UD's campus.
All right, thank you very much, Joel. I think it's just very exciting when we watch that video, right? And it was great to have that camera out there the whole time, being able to watch that project and see the results. I'd like to, so we have just a minute or two. Any questions for Joel? Any questions about the low dam removal process? Okay, well, and you can save your questions. We have plenty of time, but I'd like to welcome Donnie Knight with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service up to the microphone.
Am I change up the slide? Okay, sorry. Thanks, everyone. Donnie Knight, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. I work under what's called the Partners for Fish and Wildlife program. So we are solely restoration on private lands, so non-state or federally owned lands. We do a lot of different restorations, but I'm going to talk a little bit, since we're at the River Summit, I'm going to talk about some of the stuff we do with rivers here in Ohio. So this is just some of the current work that we're doing on primarily the Great Miami, within the Great Miami watershed, certainly. Fish passage projects. We have City of Sydney has a drinking water dam. It's a steel sheet pile dam in town. Still used as drinking water. They're not on the aquifer that a lot of these towns down this way are on. So they still utilize the river for drinking water. So as it was mentioned, the safety for recreational users is paramount. You know, obviously our agency, we're looking at fish and wildlife resources, water quality, things like that. But unfortunately, Sydney has experienced some of the dangers of this, and there's been some fatalities on that dam. So we will essentially, when we're not doing full removal, which is primarily for the river itself, barrier removal is typically going to be your best, your most impactful, because it not only allows the fish passage that we're looking at, but it also ensures that sediment transport process. You don't have that over-widened pool behind the dam. So, but in cases where we can't, the case of Sydney and somewhat Covington on the Stillwater River, we can put in what you can sometimes call them nature-like fishways or riffles. They're basically riffles that have enough roughness in the channel that we can pass. Basically, we picked particular species. So we have a small-bodied fish species. In this watershed, we use slenderhead darter. And then we have a large-bodied species fish for low flow that we need to pass. So in this watershed, again, we use smallmouth buffalo sucker. So that ensures that at different water levels, different times of the year, we're going to be able to pass those fish based on swim studies that have been done previously. Two other projects that we kind of combined together in funding is the City of Piqua. There's a old gate dam that was used for cooling waters that's no longer used. That'll be removed. And then they also have, just like Sydney, a drinking water dam that can't be removed. So we're putting a riffle structure in to allow safe paddling access over and through that structure, but also the fish species can continue up during migration. City of Troy, low dam removal. There is an oxbow reconnection. So there's, if you're familiar with Troy, at the Miami Shores public golf course, the historic alignment of the Great Miami is a big long oxbow that goes around. So we'll be reconnecting that. And then in almost all of these cases, there's some component, Joel mentioned, making sure the stream doesn't head cut after the removal of a project or a dam. So there's almost always some in-stream habitat to ensure the river's going to behave in a way that's not going to, potentially wash out infrastructure, be it under the river or the river banks, levee systems, that kind of thing. So some of the other stuff we're doing aside from that, we're doing, I tend to call them off-channel wetland restorations. You could also hear them called, if you're talking about salmon of the Pacific Northwest. You might hear it called side channel development, bank full wetland. But essentially, a lot of our river systems, not just unique to the Great Miami River, but a lot of our rivers, particularly some of our big rivers, there's been a disconnection, a lateral disconnection to floodplains. That could be from channel incision, that could be from levees, old farm embankments, and then also probably one of the biggest things is sedimentation over the years, where we've got sediment that has deposited in our floodplains and it's occupying that space. So this is a picture of a project in Miami County with the Miami County Park District. The area in green in that picture, we planted 2 native hardwood trees and shrubs in 2016, I believe. And then after that, we left that area that you see, that's part of the basin, and then up and around that little point of trees, there's a second basin. But some of the cool things about these projects to me, obviously there's, on a system this size, there's not going to be a massive flood stage reduction, but it certainly helps provide more flood capacity. Probably more importantly, for the river itself, is you can help shave those peak discharges. So you see those rain events and the river spikes up, goes back down, spikes up. You can shave some of that discharge and that energy off of the river. Sediment and nutrient loads that's really what's funding these. So if you're familiar with the H2 Ohio program, the statewide wetland initiative, sediment and nutrient uptake is driving pretty much all of that. So that picture is of my nephew from Virginia. I put that in there because these can have really incredible recreational opportunities. That particular wetland has 33 species of fish. All but 2 of those have come in on their own. We have reintroduced bowfin, which is a wetland species that would have occurred historically in this watershed. Probably still does on the lower reaches, but and then also warmouth sunfish, which looks a lot like a rock bass, which is in the aquarium over there. Some of the other things we've done, we're working with Miami Conservancy District, our agency, Division of Wildlife. We're doing a fish passage study at the Taylorsville Dry Dam. And we've essentially, you see 2 tags there, small pit tag, and then an external tag for people if they're angling and they catch a fish. It'll have some details on that tag that you can call in or report that fish. So that's in year 1 still. We have some arrays that when the fish, basically what happens, we tag all the fish. They're below the dam. When they swim up through the dam and swim over that array, it has a unique code, and it tells us what fish and what species that has come up through. And I'll give a lot of the credit for that project from a funding and getting all the equipment. Obviously MCD's been a huge part of that with us, but Kevin helped. If you want to raise your hand, Kevin's with our National Fish Passage program for the Ohio River Basin. So Indiana, Ohio, and Illinois. So Kevin's involved in pretty much all of this stuff that I'm mentioning. Another cool thing we're doing, American eelgrass. This is a species of submerged aquatic vegetation. So in short, people call them or refer to them as SAV. Eelgrass is one of many. We have the various longleaf pondweeds, sago pondweed. Primarily, we're looking at focusing on American eelgrass. This species would have occurred throughout all of our freshwater streams. In Ohio, Southwest Ohio in particular, I don't know of any remnant populations. I know there's been a few in the upper Ohio that's been found in some of those tributaries. It still occurs in the Lake Erie Western Basin. So that's a clump that's on the Great Miami River. One thing you notice, like behind that eelgrass, and that's a very small, young clump of eelgrass. I think that was year 2 after planting. You notice that real fine sediment line right behind that? That's also a really critical function. We talk about stream roughness and sediment and nutrient uptake and bed load movement. That fine silt that those plants can pull out and secure and hold is really important. You noticed, I think Joel had a picture of a mussel as well. That's another important species in terms of getting funding and competing. That's not a listed species or anything, but that's a filter feeder. So all the things that affect water quality for us, bacteria, E. coli, things like that, filter feeders, they'll gobble it up. So in a sense, some people refer to them as the kidneys of the river, right? That mussel and that eelgrass relationship, and then also you see a picture of a darter. In areas where eelgrass is still doing well, the Allegheny, which is the start of the Ohio River, right? One of the streams. You almost always find American eelgrass, northern riffle shell, which is a federally listed species, and longhead darter. Those three species, which is a host fish for the northern riffle shell. So there's a really complex relationship that that eelgrass is missing from our water. So we're putting those back in and having some good success. I found my first naturally regenerated from seed or plant materials below eelgrass planting this past summer. So challenges real quick, because I think I'm getting my cue. Diverse partnerships, diverse goals, that's a good thing, right? But it does add complexity. So Joel went into a lot of detail on all the different things that go into play. And probably one of the most difficult things, or it's not a bad thing, but figuring out how to work in what Fish and Wildlife wants to what Troy or Piqua or another one of these community wants, what they all want to get out of it, because at the end of the day, and then the MCD has flood protection. So kind of working all that diversity and all those goals in can be one of the challenges. Obviously funding, gaining community support, and all that kind of stuff. Funding, I'll talk about. Joel mentioned some of the mitigation credits. That's a good one. On the projects that I mentioned, some of the major ones, WRSP, that's administered through Ohio EPA. I won't go into details of what that is, but WRSP, you can look that up. As I mentioned, Kevin's office, they administer the National Fish Passage Program. Our program, very small program, but we help a lot in kind and things like that, planning. Science Enhancement Grant was for the Fish Passage Study. H2 Ohio Rivers Initiative, Carterville's FICO office, Kevin's office has some funds here and there to try to help things keep moving. And the Conservancy District, just wanted to ahead and say they've helped us out a lot on some front end feasibility studies, conceptual design, things like that. As did the ODNR Scenic Rivers program. So how'd I do? I think that's it. Yep. Thanks.
Thank you, Donnie. I think you can all understand that what goes into this river to keep it healthy and clean, it's not just a matter of one aspect or another. Keeping these fish and their habitat healthy is a really complex process. So I do want to point out that the reason we brought the Orsenko Aquarium here to the summit is to point out that this is a real living home for these creatures. And those are, despite the fact that the aquarium says Ohio River on the top, that's who we are borrowing it from today, and their staff are doing a great job interpreting it. Those fish came out of the river yesterday with Donnie and his team, Kevin, and the Orsenko team. All of those things came out of the Great Miami River, and incredibly. So it takes a lot to keep those fish happy and healthy, and we want it that way, right? So thank you so much, Donnie. I'm the next, we're going to pivot just a little bit. So now we've talked about what goes into removal. We've talked about how impactful that removal can be for biology. But we're going to hear from our river stewards, and I'll let them each introduce their names, about how taking these low dams out or making sure that the safety signs and things like that, the portages are really keep us safe as well. So let's welcome the river stewards. Okay.
Can you just introduce us?
Hi everyone, my name's Andrew Barch. I'm a senior civil engineering major at University of Dayton, and we're students from the River Stewards 2025 cohort. We'll be discussing our capstone project that we've been working and implementing the last 3 years, really focusing on MAPD, the safety and educational signage at Island Metro Park on the Great Miami. So really, just to kind of get into it, we have, our program is broken up into 3 years, starting at our sophomore year, and we really are just focusing sophomore year education about the river, all the partners involved in City of Dayton, and those kind of connections we can make and just what's going on. During our junior year, we're then learning about kind of honing in on our interests and where we want to divert most of our time to our capstone project. And then it really leads into our senior year this year, implementing that project based on everything we've been learned and introduced to. And so our cohort really landed on the river and focusing on some kind of aspect with getting people on the river, just because it's so important to us that we had a real connection there. At our sophomore year, we have a paddle where we start at where we paddle in the Great Miami, and we end up at Island Metro Park for one of the paddle days. And this park and just being on the river really connected with us, and we really wanted to be able to expand that and get more people to be able to experience and just appreciate the river and the things that we had come to appreciate ourselves. But the thing to note about Island Metro Park is the low dam there at that site. If you're coming up to the low dam, it's really difficult to see just because of the horizon line. You can't tell it's there. And so this is a safety point we really wanted to focus on improving. And so we thought the best way to go about doing this was to installing signage at this location to create better awareness of the low dam there, so that if people were paddling on the river, they would know about it. It would improve the safety, as well as just make people more confident that if they did want to go on the river, they would know what to do and not be worried about the safety difficulties there. And so this also involved a lot of other aspects with the island itself. We wanted to create a route to paddle, which I'll go into next here. And so because it's an island, you're able to paddle around the whole island itself. And so this also tied into the safety signage that we wanted to implement. So involved with this, like I mentioned, was the Lowhead Dam. The multiple stakeholders we'll talk about next are the City of Dayton, Five Rivers Metro Parks, who own the Metro Park there, Island Metro Park, and the Miami Conservancy District, who mainly deals with the floodplain. And so it was, there's just a lot of different aspects that we had to grapple with and deal with. And so just to kind of finish up this spot, the reason we picked Island Metro Park to begin with was because, like I said, we had really come to a connection here from our paddle, but also as an underserved community. We really wanted to bring more awareness and attention to this spot because it is really beautiful and really a great spot to be. It's also a great introductory place if you want to get paddling to start here. And with the upcoming Great Miami Riverfront plan that will be implemented over the next 10 to 20 years, this is a great spot that will get people to know about the river and then be able to kind of expand and connect to that project in the future. So now this is the location and layout of our safety signs that will be implemented, and I'll let each of my fellow cohort members discuss the partners involved in the signs that we're going to put here.
And then
So the first partner that we're kind of going to talk about is the City of Dayton Public Works Department. So it was really important to tie them in with this project as they are the ones that actually have jurisdiction over the Lowhead Dam. And if you look at this map, the Lowhead Dam is all the way at the bottom. It kind of has those 2 green circles on it. And they also, it's good to note that the city of Dayton also has jurisdiction over the Helena Street Bridge, which is that bridge in that photo over there, which was another really good spot that we thought would be nice to have safety signage. And so we wanted to kind of loop them in and make sure that they were aware that we were wanting to get the safety signage in this area. So this is ultimately where we want the sign to go and what we wanted to say. We have kind of that schematic of danger, dam ahead, 1,300 feet, just to let people know that that dam is coming up pretty quickly and to kind of give people a chance to either portage or kind of turn around just so that they're aware that that dam is coming up. Also, for Five Rivers Metro Parks, they have jurisdiction over the park themselves. Our main message is to also, before people even reach the water, they kind of understand that this is a river access point and that they are kind of more confident about where the put in, put out sites are, and also by the dam where to portage. So, and particularly in Five Rivers Metro Parks, we wanted to have like a high visibility of these signs on like the actual island area if you're on the water. So we had opportunities to meet with like the park manager, the regional manager, and also the Five Rivers Metro Park outdoor recreation to kind of discuss how can we make the signs more visible for people on the island, on the park and on the water. And we identified certain locations such as the Greater Dayton Greater Rowing Club area. They have like a dock that has that we could put a post on that could be seen right before you get to the bottom of the island, and that's like a kind of like the final warning sites. So we kind of discussed that we could like angle a sign on their property so that when you're paddling through and passing the island before you approach the dam, it's like the final warning to stay close to the island, so you could turn around and kind of do that circular route. But also looking at the put-in locations, just so people know that on the procedures of like, hey, what's safe, kind of understanding to know like it's safe to go on the water and what to expect, and kind of knowing that you should expect to see the dam warning signs.
Right. We also worked heavily with the Miami Conservancy District. They've been a champion in this project since the very beginning. So, thank you for Sarah and the whole team for working so closely with us on this. Obviously, Miami Conservancy District is in charge of the flood control, the floodplain, the levees. So figuring out, who has jurisdiction in this area. Is it the city of Dayton that, we're putting a sign on their property by the dam or next to the dam? Does that fall on Miami Conservancy District? We worked a little bit with both the main part of Island Metro Park and then where that orange triangle is highlighted on this map. There's a heron habitat that is also controlled by the Five Rivers Metro Park. So we wanted to sign in that area. And again, it's on the floodplain. So does that fall under MCD? Does that fall under Five Rivers? Some important conversations that we had throughout this process. In the end, I think we landed on a roughly 9 sign locations tentatively going in. A lot of these do end up falling on MCD property. So working closely with them is very important here. This picture here corresponds to where this arrow is pointing on the previous slide. As you come around the corner, again, we mentioned that the dam is hard to see with the horizon line, but you also are kind of turning left. And it seems like maybe the logical location would be to take out river right to portage, but really we'd like to encourage people to take out river left. So a sign, at the tip of the island, as well as I think we have a location marked on the map here on river right, just before the dam near the Greater Dayton Canoe Club, that are encouraging people that, hey, we really should be taking out left here. We worked with Cap Signs, a company out of Dayton that works closely with both MCD and Five Rivers Metro Parks. So again, appreciate both of you guys for putting us in connection with Cap. They've done some great work to get our signs up and running. So we have a few that we've teased on the previous slides already. The Danger 1300 feet was designed by them, and we showed that on the Helena Street Bridge slide. So this year, these signs will be on MCD property. Danger, take out left. Again, we want to encourage people to get left. And another concern that we had kind of brought up when we were working through this project is that if you don't know where the portage is, again, we mentioned that you'd like to take out river left and encourage people to go that way rather than river right. If you're not familiar with that, coming from upstream, the portage is kept up well, but if you don't know where to take out, then it makes it difficult. So installing a sign that says like, hey, here's where you can portage, it encourages the maintenance to keep that kept up, clean for people who are paddling, makes it a little bit safer. We also worked with them to create our signs for Island Metro Park. While we're paddling, part of the signs here are encouraging, if you're not prepared to portage and go downriver, Island Metro Park is a safe place to take out. You can drop boats there. You can leave cars in the parking lot to be able to take boats out. We want to encourage people to say like, hey, this is your last chance. Here's where you can take out safely. So this sign here, Island Metro Park Takeout, is intended to be water facing to encourage people to get out safely. And then again, danger dam ahead, 700 feet. This is what we were intending to put up near that heron habitat I mentioned earlier.
Good.
I think that's it from us, unless there's any questions.
Let's give all of our speakers a round of applause. They did such a great job. I think you can understand why we wanted to recognize them with the Stewardship Award. They just so thoroughly researched this problem, identified it. We know how hard it is to work with multiple jurisdictions, many of us, and they tackled it like pros. And I just think that it is such an amazing feat to be seniors in college still and be able to put a solution to a problem like this. So thank you guys. We're really proud of you. I don't want to delay us only because you need to travel, but a couple things. One, we are talking about low dams today because you told us on your surveys last year that you wanted to hear about this topic. So here we are. So when you get that survey, remember that we listen to you very carefully and give you what you're looking for in the next, in future gatherings.
Hello, my name is Todd Palmer, and I'm the CEO for Great Parks in Hamilton County. Great Parks is excited to share that we are extending the Grapevine River Trail from Butler County to the Ohio River. This 36-mile section of trail and blueway will connect our trail systems and access to the river. The first river access point is currently under design and will be constructed and open in 2026. For your next session, please head to the Market Square building located in the center of downtown on Main Street. It starts at the top of the hour. If this is your last session of the day, be sure to sit tight. At 4 p.m., we will start a closing ceremony, including an announcement of the 2026 Riverway Summit. When that is concluded, please join us for the after party at Entropy Brewing starting at 4:15, sponsored by the Miamisburg Merchant Association. Light snacks and the first 2 drinks are on them. Have fun.
Wasn't that a great day discussing development and activities along the Riverway? I'm Mayor Pat Mueller from the city of Hamilton. This past year, Hamilton opened the building behind me. It is the Well House Hilton Hotel along the Great Miami River. When you're here in Hamilton sometime, please visit the Well House Hotel as well as the Lucky Well Tavern as part of the hotel complex. Also, when you visit Hamilton, please consider checking out our River's Edge concerts. For 2025, we have 40 free concerts and special events. And while I'm saying when you visit Hamilton, it's just kind of like announcing the next location of the Olympics. The 2026 Riverway Summit will be in the beautiful city of Hamilton, Ohio, and will be hosted by Fitton Center for the Creative Arts, which is right catty corner to the Well House Hotel and Lucky Tavern. We are planning a new mix of sessions and activities like no other prior Riverway Summit. See ya in 2026.